one specific video was watched 87 million times, and it felt like the universe wanted the mission to happen. So we moved from 10 million happy to 1 billion happy, and our conversation today is part of that. Now, I wanna start. I'll just give a very brief intro if you want, and then we open for questions. I want to start by saying that happiness truly, in the most interesting time that I have ever lived, during my lifetime, which is now, happiness has nothing to do with what life gives you. Okay, so you can lose a child and still find happiness. You can be locked down under COVID-19 and still find happiness. You can, start a startup that promises to be amazing, but then shuts down and still find happiness. Happiness is irrelevant to what it is that life gives you. It basically is all about how you interpret, how you deal with what life gives you, that determines your state of happiness or unhappiness. And I assumed, I actually took a very scientific approach to the topic when I was searching for my own happiness. And the scientific approach was very straightforward. I looked at every moment in my life where I felt happy and tried to find a common thread between them, if you want. And the only thing that's common across all of the moments in your life where you ever felt happy is you're happy not when a certain event happens, right? Some of you may have walked into this, and because I'm bold, you said, this is not going to be great. Others were like, ooh, bold, that's cute, that's nice, right? Bold in itself doesn't make you happy or unhappy, right? Bold is compared to your expectations, right? If you expect that good speakers will have dreadlocks, then I'm a big disappointment, right? If you expect that good speakers may not have dreadlocks, or may be bold like Bruce Willis saved us in the old days when he started to shave his head like me, right? You start to go like, yeah, it's good, and it's not about the actual event. It's about what your expectation from life. And so I summarized that in an equation, and the equation is your happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the events of your life and your expectations and hopes and wishes of how life should be. And really, when you think about that, you start to realize that it's actually very straightforward. That no event ever made you happy or unhappy. Every time you felt happy or unhappy, you compared an event, your perception of that event, to how you wanted life to be. And if life fell short, you felt unhappy. And that's it, really. And when you understand it that way, you start to ask yourself a question. So, all of you are young, you're amazing, you're living in a reasonable place in the world where you have an internet connection and a device that you can actually connect to the internet from. And, when you really compare yourself to the majority, let's say 4 to 5 billion others in the world, you're actually doing better, okay? But yet, somehow, 60 to 70% of the thoughts in an adult brain are negative. This is actual research in Stanford. 60 to 70% of the thoughts that always come up in the adult brain are basically saying something's wrong, something bad, something sad, okay? How can that be? I mean, if 60 to 70% of your life was wrong, you wouldn't be with us today. You understand? I mean, in reality, the majority of our life is okay, but there are a few issues here and there that become, annoying, if you want, but that doesn't mean that there is enough wrong with life for us to be unhappy more than maybe once a day, once a week, once a month, and so on. So I started to research the idea of if the happiness equation is saying, can you guys hear the rain, by the way? Can you hear me well? Okay, yeah, so it started raining very heavily, and that misses my expectations. So the emotion that I have in me is concern, okay? It's the happiness equation. The event is it started to rain and I can hear it very loudly. The emotion in me is, can they hear me clearly? And I feel a little concerned, which is negativity. Now I asked you and you said, no, we can hear you well. The event doesn't matter anymore, okay? So the research I have done is that if life is mostly okay, but we feel unhappy so often, then it must be not because of the event, but it must be because of the way we interpret events. okay? Or it must be because of the way we set expectations. So if you actually take an equation that says A equals B minus C, and you enter the wrong B and the wrong C, the value of A is always going to be wrong, okay? And so we're not unhappy because life is so horrendous. We're unhappy because sometimes we don't see the events for what they are, and sometimes we don't set expectations realistically. And when we do that, then the equation breaks and we feel unhappy. My view of life is that there are 6 grand illusions and 7 blind spots, ways that we think about life that make us break that equation, okay? But that in reality, most of the time, life is actually okay. It's not worthy of unhappiness. It sometimes gives us signals to do things and change things, and it gives us little emotions, but it's not worthy for us to stay stuck in where we are. I'll close with 2 minutes on COVID-19 because I think this is really important, okay? So take that happiness equation and take the event of COVID-19 and say, we are locked down. Some of us who are entrepreneurs are losing their businesses. There is an economic crisis. There is no vaccine. We're all at risk of dying. The event misses our expectations clearly, and we have every reason to be unhappy, okay? And I'll say, if you see it that way, then yeah, you have every reason to be unhappy. But there are other ways to see it. I'll give you a few, okay? One is, if this was Ebola and not COVID-19, we would have completely lost half of humanity by now, okay? Ebola was much more lethal, and it was a much higher risk. 2 is, I am 53 today, okay? Let me tell you, I was born in 1967. If I was born in 1900, just so that you know the difference, by 1914, the world would have lost so many millions of people to World War I. By 1927, I think, we would have lost around 50 million to Spanish flu. By 1937, when I'm 37 years of age, we would have gone through the Great Depression, the worst economic crisis by far. By 1945, we would have lost, I don't know how many millions to World War II, 90 million, I think. By age 50, we would have lost 300 million people to smallpox, okay? Compare that to 700,000 people that we lost in COVID-19, and you would realize that the fact is actually that we're not in such a bad place, okay? As a matter of fact, if you think about it, of the 700,000 that we lost to COVID-19, 90% statistically were already in a place of vulnerability. So they were suffering from other diseases. And then more importantly, by the way, if you compare 700,000 that died so far to COVID-19 to around 2.1 million that died to other respiratory diseases during COVID-19, you would realize that the biggest problem we have is that the media and the politicians are exaggerating things beyond control, okay? Now, I can go on and on and on to tell you the following. The truth about where we are, if you ask me, compared to how I lived if I was born to 1900, is very straightforward, okay? All that they've asked us to do, by the way, if you're healthy, which I can see most of you are healthy and smiling and wonderful, so you haven't caught the disease yourself, you're not in an intensive care yourself. If you haven't lost your economic ability to sustain yourself, I can see most of you are not starving, okay? And if you haven't lost a loved one, then the only way you can look at the current situation is, I'm so lucky. The world is going upside down and I'm in a good place. As a matter of fact, the only thing that I consider has happened to all of us is they put us home to either reflect or binge watch Netflix, okay? This is the reality of the event, okay? I choose to reflect. I choose to spend a lot of this time connecting to loved ones, talking to people like you, meditating, doing things that are good for me. Others choose to watch Netflix in abundance, and both are okay. If you really think about it, nothing is really that horrible. And I want to say that if you really look at life this way, something amazing happens. I'm not talking to you about all of this because I want you to be happy and elated and jump up and down. I want you to understand that when you start to see life this way, you start to make a difference to life. You start to realize that sometimes life gives us things that are outside our control for us to engage so that we make things better, rather than sit back and complain about life, hoping that one day when we stomp our feet enough, life will go like, okay, little kid, I'm gonna change things for you. Okay, I stop here and then open for as many questions as you want, or we can go for coffee, whichever way you want.
Thank you so much, Mo. I might start by getting the ball rolling and ask a quick question. I love how you sort of, your approach on COVID. It's really refreshing and nice to hear. Sort of moving into a slight segue into your podcast, Slow Mo, I listened to your conversation with Robert Waldinger, and in which you discuss the human study revealing that people are the happiest, and past the bare minimum, like all the success and money is not parallel to more happiness. So I'm quite safe to assume that our audience are quite ambitious, and some find happiness when they work hard and do well, but this can be quite time consuming. And you're very hugely successful and you have a lot on your plate at one time. And I was wondering how you find the time to be so productive and get so much done while also slow down, and why it's so important that we do this.
That's a fantastic question, but that's 3 questions in one. So allow me to try and answer them in layers. First of all, yes, by the way, money and success, even though are good ambitions to have, I can promise you will not make you happy. Okay, so I say that out of my own experience. There was a point in my life where I had 16 cars in my garage, every car you've ever dreamt of. And the minute you sit behind the steering wheel, all you see is the road. Okay, and so the truth is they sell those dreams to us because of advertising, because of capitalism. But the truth is you find happiness truly inside of you and in being with others that you love. This is truly how it is. And so material things don't make us happy simply because happiness is never found outside us. Okay, and simply because every time we gain material possessions, immediately our brains reset to wanting more material possessions. Okay, so the truth is, you get one car and then you get inside it and you go like, okay, that was my dream, but I just somehow don't feel amazing about it. Maybe I should have gotten it in blue. Okay, and so the next car you look for blue, and then you get inside it and you go like, nah, maybe it's a little, I need a convertible. And then you keep going on to that dream. And by the way, that's not only about luxury items. Think about all of your friends or yourself. You graduate from university, you tell yourself, if I get enough money to survive and be independent, I'll be very happy. You get that. A week later, you say, oh, but it's time to get a mortgage. I need £1,000 more. And then you get that. And then you say, but, look, their apartment is better than mine. I need £20,000 more. And the goal continues to change. So I found in my life that happiness is irrelevant to success, is irrelevant to material possessions. Happiness is an independent path that you take through life as you do those other things. If you wait for those other things to be your ticket to happiness, you're bound to actually find a lot of disappointment. Now, your question at its core was saying, so how can you be so successful? I believe I was reasonably successful. I still am reasonably successful. I do 7 jobs today. I do 3 startups. I have 3 startups. I have Slow Mo. I'm writing 2 books at the same time. I work on 1 Billion Happy, and I develop content for social media and other stuff. Now, when you really think about it, how can anyone do all of this and slow down? Okay, how can anyone engage in all of this when startup life is full of challenges and hardships sometimes and surprises, and be happy? And I'll tell you, the answer will surprise you. The answer is happiness is not the outcome of all of those. Happiness is the energy that drives all of those. Okay, so if you look at everything that I do in life, I actually never spent an hour of my life. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but I never spent an hour of my life doing a job that I didn't love. Okay, believe it or not, every single time. So I'll give you the biggest example. I was vice president of emerging markets for Google. I was responsible for half of Google worldwide. And it's a massive job, right? Like if I missed by $1, Google would miss its targets. Okay, great place to be, paid handsomely, and I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed it when I was opening the new offices. I enjoyed it when I was, thinking of the new ideas, launching the new languages, making a difference to the economies I was going into. But once it became an operation and they wanted me to fill CRM and all of that crap, I was like, I don't like that stuff. Okay. And so basically, to the surprise of many people, I said, I'm leaving, but I'm not leaving now. I'm leaving in 6 months. I'm looking for another place that I enjoy and love. And once I did that, Sergey Brin, our co-founder at the time, said, hey, that's amazing. I want you to come and run Google X, which was more fun and more excitement and the stuff that I like. So to choose to be happy, interestingly, makes you more successful. It's not the other way around. To do things that you love, to do things that you enjoy, which I think is the biggest decision, believe it or not, that you have to make at this young age, okay? To actually visit yourself on the inside and remove all of the conditioning and imprints that society has placed on you, that your parents have told you is the right thing, that your friends are making you believe is what matters, okay? If you can strip all of that down and tell yourself inside, this is what I enjoy, this is what I want to do with my life, okay? You're going to have to find one of two paths. One path is to go and work to pay the bills so that you can live that passion, okay? Or make that passion your life. Either way, you will live a fulfilled and successful life, okay? If you go, however, and live your life trying to build a slightly better photo sharing app because it's bound to make you a lot of money, but you freaking hate photo sharing and it has no purpose in it and it doesn't make any difference to anyone and the world doesn't need it, what you will end up doing is you will go to work every day hating it and asking life to compensate you with more material possessions so that you can find happiness, and that equation constantly breaks. I believe I found happiness because I found success because I was happy. I found success because I slowed down. And by the way, so that's the other, I'm sorry, it's a long, I told you it was a complex question. So the last part of that question is slowing down. Slowing down to me is not a matter of doing less, okay? It is a matter of doing what matters. Do you understand that difference, okay? So I do, so I have one of my startups is bound to be one of the largest startups in the history of Europe. Okay, at least I hope it will be, and it has the potential to be. I work on it less than 4 hours a day, 4 times a week, 4 days a week. Okay, and that's a choice that basically makes my team empowered and engaged and able to take decisions because I'm not there all the time getting engaged in the nitty-gritties of it. Maybe in your early startups, you're not going to be able to make such choices. But believe it or not, in every startup, 90% of what takes your time doesn't matter. Okay? You know, when I coach startups, the first thing they go is like, okay, we need to hire lawyers and get the legal structure done and do this and do that. And I'm like, that's a waste of your life and money, right? Just get your product right first, get your design right first, do this right first, and so on and so forth. So 90% of your life is not worth the effort that you put in it. And Slow-Mo, my podcast, is really focusing entirely on that. It's focusing on the idea that there are things in life that matter. And those things deserve a full hour of conversation where you leave everything else behind and spend that hour tuning into that conversation, okay? Because that 1 hour, believe it or not, think to yourself how many times you spent an hour believing that you're not making progress, listening to something, and that 1 hour completely changed your path, okay? And when it changed your path, it saved you 100 hours because you went from, I'm going to go this way to get to my target, to, oops, my target is right here. Now I know I can get to it much quicker. And that idea is really, really important, especially in your young years when you have so much energy, where you put your energy.
Thank you so much, Mo. It's really nice to hear. It's quite intimidating at our age to sort of jump into a career. So it's nice to sort of have a new perspective of choosing what makes you happy, and that will lead to more success. At this point, sort of looking at the time, I'd love to let the audience have time to ask lots of questions. So if people want to raise their hand, I think that's possible, then I can unmute you and you can ask a question. Alternatively, just pop it in the chat and we can go through that. So I think we'll start off. There's a question in the chat, Mo, which says, what's your startup in Europe about? I think it's referring to the one you were talking about earlier.
I have 3 startups as we speak. The one that I believe will change the world mostly. So one of them is about happiness. The other is about matching those in need of coaching and therapy to the right people. And the third is about reinventing consumerism. And we don't talk about it. You will find very, very little in the mainstream media and online. Our website is tiny. Because I believe that this is the best way to actually reduce the noise. And so you don't waste cycles on people that just want to blabber. What we're attempting to do is the following. If you look at retail, especially food retail, and the way food retail has evolved over the years, we have built infrastructure that was favoring efficiency, profitability of the retailer, and longevity of the product, if you want. Okay, this is what we built. And that infrastructure made products move very inefficiently around the world. And if you really, really look at the most efficient infrastructure for moving anything in the world today, it's TCP/IP. And so there are different ways where we think by moving products differently, we can reinvent consumerism in ways that would reduce waste drastically. By the way, 30% of all of the food that you buy goes to waste. You have to think about that, huh? With so many people hungry around the world, with so many, with so much energy and resources being dedicated to moving things around, and then you throw away 30% of it, right? Let alone all of the plastic, all of the wrapping, all of the, it's just a horrendous idea to throw away 30%. And so if you build a distribution infrastructure for e-commerce that is more similar to TCP/IP than it is to the mainframe, which is the current infrastructure, if you think about Amazon or Ocado, if you're in the UK and so on, very big processing units outside the city with very long networks to achieve. If you build something similar to TCP/IP, I could get you anything you wish for within 30 minutes. Similar to what you do with Uber Eats and Deliveroo. But then in that case, you wouldn't really need to order 4 apples. You only need to order 1 when you wish for an apple. And if that is the case, you end up not throwing that apple away, and we reduce waste, we reduce energy. Because we're very close to you, it's all electric, so there is no pollution. And it's an ambition that is, again, for all of you who are thinking about businesses. One thing that Larry Page taught me, and I worked very closely with Larry and Sergey of Google, was something that is called the toothbrush test. Okay, capitalism teaches us to start our thinking from a business plan that is going to make us money. Okay, Larry taught us to think of our businesses from a product plan that's going to change the world. Okay, and his view is if you build a solution to a big problem that affects the life of 1 billion people and did it so well that they used it twice a day like a toothbrush, you're bound to make a lot of money. Okay, and so my current startup, it's called Today with a 0 instead of an O. Today is trying to do that. It's motivated by reinventing consumerism in a way that allows the world to be better. Okay, if we fix it, the retailer becomes more profitable, the consumer gets a much better service, and the planet benefits. If we manage to do this, then we're bound to make a lot of money. Okay? But remember, the objective of the business plan is not money. The objective of the business plan is I'm going to build a product that's going to change things in a way that everyone will want to use it. And I think this is where most entrepreneurs fail. Okay, they either fail because they think of the money before they think of the impact, or they either fail because they think of the product and they don't think about what makes them happy. Okay, what they're passionate about. And entrepreneurship is a very tough place, right? It's very demanding. It pushes you back all the time. And unless you can actually do something that you love and you're passionate about and you feel the impact of, you're likely to get the world to push you back rather than push you forward.
Thank you, Mo. That was very, very well answered and really interesting to hear your perspective. And the next question is from Carmen, who asked, "What happened next what happened with your career at Google X?"
So after Google X, I published my book in 2017, and as I told you, around 8 weeks into my launch, my original mission was 10 million happy, and 10 million happy happened, I think, in 8 weeks. Okay. And by the way, I don't measure happiness in terms of they saw a video. We measure that they actually joined the mission. So they got the message and then they took action. Okay. And so my team at the time got together and said, okay, so this is clearly, that was clearly sandbagging. You set up the wrong target. And so we agreed to 1 billion happy as the target. So 1 billion happy is the current mission and the current nonprofit organization. And 1 billion happy, in my view, has been, I think, is worth for someone to dedicate their life to. My daughter is my other anchor. And she basically came to me at the time and she said, "Papa, you have to understand you were paid in advance," which is a very, very, very profound statement. Because as I told you, I was born in Egypt, raised in Egypt. You can easily see that my English is not perfect, and I went really, really far in life, way more than my expectations. And I believe in what my daughter told me, which was life was telling me, you're going to have to make a difference, whether in your career at Google or other jobs, or in 1 billion happy. So we're going to pay you in advance so that you don't have to worry about the basics of life. I'm not the richest person, I'm not even close in terms of richness compared to the rich people, but I wear $19 t-shirts and I no longer have 16 cars. Okay. And so my life is very simple. It's, and as a result, I decided that perhaps it's a better use of my time and money and resources and effort to try and make 1 billion happy than to make another product. I have to say as well, at the time, I started to have serious concerns about AI. And I built a lot of what you know about AI, at least in Google, because AI was part of Google X, artificial intelligence in Google was part of Google X mostly. And so I started to realize that advancing technology as far as we went was good, but any further technology is actually either not needed. So we really don't need an iPhone 11 or iPhone 12 or iPhone 13. And at the same time, it's wasteful for the planet, but also it has some real ethical issues. If you have seen The Social Dilemma, you would understand what I'm talking about. And so as a result, I decided that to resign from Google. It took me around 6 months to leave. So we announced 1 billion happy in November 2017, launched the book in March, announced 1 billion happy in November, and then I could only manage to leave Google by March 2018. And then I dedicated myself fully to that for a year and a bit, 14 months. And then in 2019, I started today.
Thank you, Mo. It's interesting you mentioned The Social Dilemma. I was actually thinking about asking your thoughts on that documentary. But for now, should we ask Larissa, who has her hand up? Ask her to unmute.
Good. Hi, everyone. Thanks for hosting this. It's a really a phenomenal gathering, I think. I've got a simple question, actually. If you, well, maybe one step back, if you talk about, having your goals in life, and particularly when you have some ambitious goals, you feel like you're on your way to achieve them, but you're not quite there. Sometimes you have a little bit of that unsettled feeling because, yeah, you're moving, but your goal is still not there. So if you then talk sort of on your day-to-day, trying to be more in the moment, what sort of habits, maybe, the way you start your day are particularly helpful to you in trying to be more present and let them sort of be, kind of North Stars rather than something you feel you have to achieve today?
Yeah, I don't, I may be misunderstood in my answer, so correct me if I'm misunderstood. You're never going to be there, Larissa. Okay, so that's the point, huh? We think that there is a goal that we achieve and then, we're there. There is no there. Okay, life is not about being there. Life is about the journey of getting from here to here to here to here to here. And that is the absolute truth. Anyone who has achieved, people who haven't will always tell me, of course, Mo, you say that because you have what you need. No. I know everyone that has what they need, and it doesn't mean anything to them. Okay, it somehow diminishes in the background. Huh? You are dying to get that, you know, BMW, and then a week later you go like, I want a convertible one. You're going to, you know, like, if I get, you know, he's so cute, he's so cute. If he's mine, I'll be happy forever. And then 3 months after he's yours, you go like, oh my God, he's so annoying, right? And we're never really there. We're never really there. And that understanding changes a lot of things. It really gets you to realize that there is no there is only here. Okay, and there is no then, there is only now. And when you get that deeply in your brain, you start to recognize that life itself is just a series of here and now, series of moments. And if you understand physics, if anyone loves the theory of relativity, you understand that this actually is the structure of life. This you know, 4-dimensional structure that we navigate, that's called space-time, is made of slices of here and now. Okay, basically you go through one slice, and through the arrow of time you're pushed into another slice and another slice, and you can only be in one of them at a time. Now, the real interesting thing, if I can tell you this, and please believe me as an advisor of an old man, okay, if the only way you can be outside the here and now is to anchor your thinking in the past or the future. Okay, so if you tell yourself, I want to start thinking about what he or she said last Friday, or I want to think about what will happen in January with COVID-19 and the lockdown, you're no longer in the here and now, you're in the there and then, okay? And surprisingly, I don't know if any of you like Pink Floyd, you're too young for Pink Floyd. There was a song by Pink Floyd called Time, right? Where he basically says, and then one day you find 10 years have got behind you, no one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun. Okay, and that was really the moment that was very profound for me when I was researching time. The idea that time passes, I mean, think about it, huh? We're in October. It literally feels like we're in February, okay? Time passes so quickly when we're not in the moment. You only remember the moments that you lived. The moments you were thinking about the past and the future are wasted. Okay, and I have many of my friends where it's not, you know, February to October, it's 22 to 48, and then poof, like I'm freaking 48. What happened to the last 26 years? Okay, because you don't live here and now. If you get that right, you start to realize that when you're not in the present moment, you're literally wasting the only resource you've ever been given, which is time. Okay, which is being alive in the here and now. So when I got that, I started to do a few things. I started to, one, do what they told me. I tried to meditate and say and focus on my breathing, because breathing is life, and that frustrated the hell out of me. Okay, remember, I'm a businessman, I'm a mathematician. I don't like that stuff. If you tell me to meditate, help me understand why the machine works this way first, and then tell me to meditate. And then I started to recognize that there is a way to meditate in the modern world, which is to pay attention to everything. So I don't know if you noticed this, but I've looked in your eyes since you asked that question. Okay, I saw you nodding, I see you smiling. I know that there is a painting on, you know, a small painting behind you and a curtain. Okay, and I pay full attention. I'm wondering in my mind if it's becoming more cold where you are because of what you're wearing. Now, I pay full attention to every moment I have in life, okay? And I started to do that by training myself on very simple things. When I find myself sitting in a cafe with nothing around me, I start to observe the wood pattern with an attempt to try to understand if this is real wood or fake wood, okay? I then start to look for cables. And as I look around me and find cables, I'm zoning my brain into training it to be in the here and now. I start to look for the color red. Okay, I start to look for numbers. I start whatever. I do certain things that train me to anchor myself in the here and now. When I'm with a human, I look them in the eye and I fully forget the whole world around me. Now, you may say, this is nice, Mo, it's wasting your time. Promise you, when I nailed this, okay, which was around 7 years ago, I feel that the last 7 years of my life have been longer than 10 times the 45 years before them, 46 years before them. Okay, it is incredible how you start to actually live when you're here and now. So what are my practices? My practices are all about, I only have this moment to live. I'm going to live it fully. Okay, my startup, by the way, I got a call from my co-founder right before this call saying something very urgent. We want to talk about it. I said, okay, we're going to talk about it in an hour and a bit when the call is done. Okay, yes. Right? So that idea, believe it or not, is an incredibly powerful approach. An incredibly powerful approach, not just to live, but to become a successful business people. Because trust me, the one thing that most of my teams and my customers remember about me is that when I'm with them, I'm fully with them. Okay? The reason why I make more informed decisions is because I actually notice things that people who are thinking about what they're going to have for lunch don't notice. It's an incredibly powerful tool for you to use. Emily?
Thank you, Mo. Should we move on to Emily's got her hand up. Should we lower her hand? And Emily, you can unmute yourself.
Hi Mo, thank you for speaking to us today. I just had a question. I'm curious as to what your intake is on medications and antidepressants and supplements and things like that, which makes you more happy.
Yes. So I want to answer this question from two sides. Understand that, that happiness and unhappiness, in my view, is a very logical structure. But when we are happy and when we are unhappy, we get a very different hormonal mix in our body. Okay, so when you're happy, you have oxytocins and serotonin and so on. Some people mix dopamine, which is the fun and reward hormone. I don't consider that one of the happiness hormones, but you get a hormonal mix that is different than when you're very unhappy. When you're unhappy, your sympathetic nervous system is engaged. You have adrenaline in your blood, you feel stressed, and that actually sometimes does not go away without meditation. So when you're in those stages of feeling constantly stressed, constantly under pressure, which are cases that are associated with with PTSD, with depression and so on and so forth, your hormonal makeup becomes so difficult to actually find the clarity in your mind to go back to happiness. And so in those cases, yes, some people would need to use antidepressants, but antidepressants do nothing more than fix that long enough for you to actually engage and do what you need to do to find happiness, right? And what you need to do to find happiness is to actually work through your happiness equation and understand the reasons for your unhappiness and move them away, right? So if you just rely on antidepressants, they become painkillers. They're not clearing, they're not treating the cause. They're just removing the symptoms. So they give you that false feeling of I feel better for a little while, and then you have to pop another one and another one and another one. Okay. So my advice is that if you feel that you or one of your friends are at a stage where you actually need those medications, sure, we need them. Okay, many of our friends, I believe, sure we need them, but they are there for long enough for you to engage, to give you that circuit breaker to engage and say, so now that I have clarity, what am I going to do about my happiness? That's number one. Number two is I found, and I work with a lot of people who are in a state of severe unhappiness or depression, I found that the biggest challenge you face is that people who are in depression believe they deserve to be in depression. Okay, they believe that the world is so unfair, that they are the victim, that everything is wrong. They believe that they're bad people and the world should be bad to them, or whatever that is. There is lack of self-love, and there is a belief system that basically says, I'm okay with, I want to be in that stage. I don't want to be in that stage mentally. I'm not aware of that, but I'm like, I'm okay in that stage, in that space. The only way for us to get someone who is really in deep unhappiness to go out of deep unhappiness is to get them to want to be to want to be happy. To want to be happy. When I wrote Solve for Happy, I wrote it like we write code, surprisingly, right? I'm not an author. So I wrote the first version of the book. I put it online and I had 270 people read it and edit it, okay? And I took information about who those people are. 8% of all readers dropped out at page 11, okay? And I started to wonder, why are they dropping out? Those 8% were the ones that previously told me they were depressed, okay? And on page 11, I said, happiness is a choice, okay? And once I told them that, they were like, what? Are you saying my unhappiness is because of me? No, 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 that's not true. My happiness is because of the events that life has dealt me. You can, my boyfriend is an asshole, my boss is annoying, my this, my that. I'm unhappy because of the world, not because of me, right? And I changed it in the future versions of the book so that they didn't drop out, they stayed with me. But the truth I found is that anyone in deep unhappiness only comes out of it when they realize, one, I can be in charge, and two, what I can do can make a difference. Okay. And three, and the most important is, I actually want to come out of unhappiness and be happy. I deserve that. So the answer I found with most people who have loved ones who are depressed is very straightforward. Pour love on them. Okay. And I know it sounds like a very weird thing to do, but for most of us, when some of our loved ones are deeply unhappy, we start to blame them. We start to say, to in our heart say, why are you so stupid? I want you to be happy. Can you do something about this, right? I want us to stop doing that. And instead, what you should do is simply pour love on them. Pour love on them in a systemic way. Like, find a reason every morning at 9 a.m. to text them and say, remember when we went out and had coffee in that place? That was so wonderful. I miss you. Love you. Bye. Right? And then 4 hours later, send a picture from 2018 and say, oh, remember this? This was so wonderful. I love you. Bye. Right? And, by the way, I'm eating burgers. I know you love burgers. Next time we get together, we'll have burgers. Love you. Bye. Okay. And if you keep doing that, surprisingly, I promise you, you will see a marked difference in 21 days, which will come in the form of one thing that is really interesting. They'll come to you and say, am I lovable? Like, why are you saying this shit? Like, right? And once they get that feeling for some reason, they go like, if I'm lovable, then I actually want to live. Okay. And if I want to live, then I want to be happy. So try it. Try to find ways and never blame them for their unhappiness. Never blame them for their unhappiness. Okay. Just pour love on them and they will come out of it.
Thank you, Mo, and thank you, Emily, for the question. We have quite a few more. I'll try and just do it in first come.
I can stay if others want to stay. I'm not British in any way, so I can stay for as long as.
Okay, well, just tell us when to stop, because I think the questions will keep rolling in. So we have one from Polly, which says, I was wondering if you could explain to us more about your journey in finding happiness. You mentioned your dissatisfaction with life at one point. So how did you work out to be happy, and what was the journey? And thank you for your time.
I was the happiest person you ever met until age 25, okay? And then by age 29, I was clinically depressed. The other symptoms that happened at the same time is I had a family. So I married my college sweetheart, who is the most amazing woman on the planet. I mean, we're no longer together, but I still say my wonderful ex, who's the most amazing woman on the planet, and my best friend today, right? I had 2 kids, which were wonderful in every possible way. And I started, because of my math abilities, to be able to print money on demand. Like literally, I would walk into the stock market at 8 p.m. Dubai time. By 10 p.m., I'd switch off because I've made more than $100,000 and I'm bored. Okay. So I was so good at printing money that I had everything you can dream of. And I was totally depressed, totally depressed. Why? Because interestingly, events minus expectations. So it doesn't matter what the event is. If the expectation keeps exceeding your event, you're always going to end up unhappy. I started to pour money on my unhappiness. Expensive suits, cars, as I told you, big villa, swimming pool, vacations, and none of it made me happy because basically there's no inherent value in those. You buy an expensive suit and then like, okay, so what next? You buy an expensive car, where is the next one? And so on. And I found there was a pivotal event where my daughter, so Ali was a little Zen monk. Ali was just literally a Zen monk since age 4 months. Okay. And Aya, my daughter, was the sunshine itself. Okay. She was full of energy and fun, and she wanted to laugh and she wanted to go out. And I remember vividly, because of my massive illusion of control, one Saturday when she jumped up and down coming into my breakfast area where I was working on something, and she was like, "Papa, we're going to go out and do that." And I was like, "Can we please be serious for a minute?" Okay. And my daughter, I think at the time was 4 or 5, and I could see her heart break. Okay. And I basically told myself, I locked myself in a bathroom. I cried my head off. I looked myself in the mirror and I said, I freaking hate you. Like, I freaking hate you. I can see you breaking her heart. Why are you so annoying? And I started to try and come out of my unhappiness. I couldn't, because my mathematical left-brained masculine brain was driving me to be successful in life. But that exact brain was making me extremely unable to understand most of the literature about happiness. So I couldn't understand the spiritual talk, couldn't understand the practice talk. I couldn't allow myself to do meditation the way they wanted me to, and so on and so forth. And so I took an engineering approach to it, which is very, very weird. But the happiness equation was the result of data collection. I collected as many points in my life where I felt unhappy and tried to plot a trend line between them to come up with that happiness equation. My first happiness equation was 19 parameters, right? This is how crazy my brain is. But then I had Ali, and Ali, Habibi, Ali was just a natural, okay? He basically understood it at the heart. So I would invest 6 months researching something, and then I would jump up and down like a child and go to Ali, who was 9 at the time, and say, Habibi, I discovered this. And he would ask me a couple of questions to entertain me and make me feel like I found something amazing. And then eventually says, I'm so proud of you, Papa. That's amazing. You could have just asked me, right? And literally, I would actually get the heart side of my logic from him, okay? It took me 12 years to come out of it. And within 12 years, I actually believe that I understand happiness literally almost like a piece of code. So I basically understand what triggers unhappiness, how to remove it, and so on and so forth. I started to spread this around my friends, and it started to work. It's a very unusual approach, even though, by the way, a lot of people say there is a lot of Stoicism in it, there is a lot of Buddhism in it, there is a lot of Islam in it, Sufism in it, and so on and so forth. But I think I see it from a way that distills those to data and facts and so on. And it's been working ever since. I mean, it's very, very difficult to dent my happiness.
Thank you, Mo. Our next question is from Julian, and it asks, do you think about the ways our current political economy influences happiness, or just from the perspective of the individual?
I didn't hear that. Say it again.
Do you think about the ways of our current political economy, do you think about the ways our current political economy influences happiness, or just from the perspective of the individual?
Yes, of course. So Garcia is saying, I have an embarrassing question, so we're going to take that next. And then yes, does our political and economic life today influence happiness? Yes, it does. Okay, now, let me be very clear here. I had the fortune of spending time with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I'm very good friends with Matthew Ricard, who is known to be the happiest person in the world, at least from a brain structure point of view. And everyone gets unhappy. So I'm not actually referring to what I talk about as a perpetual state of happiness that doesn't go away. The only thing I know how to do well is to bounce back from unhappiness to happiness quickly, right? But unhappiness is a survival mechanism. It's events minus expectations. It's your brain telling you, okay, something needs your attention. And because our brains talk to us all the time and we never listen, they alert us in the form of an emotion. They make you jealous, they make you sad, they make you guilty, because those emotions take you over to the point where you say, okay, you know what, I need to do something about this. Now, all those events that happen in our life, whether a breakup with someone that we love, or, you know, a politician that says something stupid, or, you know, an economic crisis that is looming, and so on and so forth. These things are the external triggers that trigger something I call emotional pain. Okay, emotional pain is your brain being alert to something being wrong, making you feel that you need to do something about it. Okay, so I feel I'm talking a little too much, so I feel concerned that I'm not going to answer all the questions. That concern gets me to say, I can be here for as long as you want. Okay, now I've taken corrective action. Now I don't feel concerned anymore. You understand? So emotional pain is useful. It's as useful as physical pain. If I poke myself with this pen, right, it will hurt me, so I'll move my hand away. This is a survival mechanism. We will always feel unhappy, okay? But we shouldn't suffer as a result. There is a difference between that emotional pain and the act of being stuck in constant unhappiness. Being stuck in constant unhappiness is a choice. So my friend telling me something hurtful and me feeling the emotional pain, I have no choice over that. But replaying that scenario 200 times in my head every day, that's my choice. That makes me suffer needlessly, okay? So similarly, when it comes to emotional, to political, economical situations and so on and so forth, I lived a little while in the UK when Brexit was a mega deal, okay? And everyone I met spoke about nothing but Brexit. They had an opinion on Brexit. They believed their life will end with Brexit or begin with Brexit. And whatever that was, okay, I constantly asked them the question of, can you do anything about it? It's like, is this within your area of concern, of influence at all? You know, your one vote, do you believe that this requires 80% of your energy and time to make that one vote, right? And people didn't realize that that event to me meant absolutely nothing. I didn't give a damn about Brexit, okay? But for most of them, while it meant everything, okay, was mainly because it was the issue in focus. Now, whatever happened with Brexit happened, and now what are we talking about? COVID-19. Whatever happened with COVID-19 happened, and now what we're all talking about is Trump. And whatever will happen with Trump will happen, and what we will talk about, the civil unrest in the US, whatever. Now we'll always find something to occupy us. I choose to only focus on issues I can influence, right? So if I can't influence an economic crisis, but I can influence how my startup runs in the case of an economic crisis, I choose to focus on that, okay? And I can choose to be unhappy about the economic crisis, saying, life is always against me. But after 27 startups, I'll tell you, life is always against you. The reason why we make money, the successful ones, is because we know how to navigate a life that is against you, okay? And that's the truth. That's the expectation. The expectation is, if it's not COVID, it's going to be an annoying investor. If it's not an annoying investor, it's going to be a competitor, and so on and so forth. This is what life is about. It's like a video game. It would be very boring if it didn't come with challenges. So my advice is very straightforward. If those issues annoy you, okay, look at them and ask yourself, can I do something about them? Are they worth my time? If you can, then dedicate the time in a fashion that allows you to do things, not to complain, okay? And if you do that, it will be amazing. all of the rest drop out of your life. It doesn't make any difference at all.
Thank you, Mo. I'm conscious of time. Are you sure? Tell me how many more questions do you think?
As if there are people and I can still speak, I'll continue.
Okay, thank you. This one was sent to me privately, so I'm not sure everyone can see it. It's from Ben, and it says, you talked a lot about the damaging effects of expectations, but without expectations of yourself, how do you motivate yourself to keep productive and live a healthy lifestyle?
There's a difference between expectation and ambition. Okay, ambition is what you directionally set yourself as a target and take as your way forward. Okay, I moved from an ambition of writing a book to an ambition of 10 million happy to an ambition of 1 billion happy. But understand, it took Jesus 2,000 years to reach 1 billion people. I'm not going to reach 1 billion people. Okay, but it's a nice ambition to dedicate the rest of my life to. My expectation is I may not make it, but that doesn't make me unhappy. Okay, if I may not make it and I made 20 of you happy today, then I'm very happy, right? Life is great. But so differentiate in your life between ambitions, big targets that deserve for you to thrive and strive to achieve them, and expectations, which is I'm always going to achieve those. Right? When you make that differentiation, everything becomes very straightforward. You can set big ambitions, but not get disappointed about them. We have 3 hands up.
Yeah, should we go for them? Mohammed, shall we lower your hand and you can unmute yourself? Mohammed?
Not anymore. Lewis?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Actually, I want to ask that actually my family runs an outdoor advertising business, a business which is like billboards, the digital LEDs in an Asian country. And I want to expand the business to include more consumers and more clients. So I just want to have your thoughts on making it possible.
Not my area of expertise, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add to that. Every business in the world, if I may be general, I'll say there is so our understanding of business is where can I find the market to make more money? That's actually not the way I understand business. The way I understand business is what is my unique strength that is needed in other places. Okay, and if you can actually understand what your unique strength is and understand where the gaps exist, it becomes, let me put it this way. I have closed deals that may exceed $100 billion in my life, and I never sold anything. And I know that sounds like a very weird thing because I don't sell. Do you understand the difference? Closing a deal is about your ability to find that sweet spot between you and your client where your offering meets their need, okay? When your offering actually meets the need of a client, or your offering meets the need of a country, or your offering the need of a corporation, or whatever that is, when your offering meets that need, then there is no involved. As a matter of fact, every time I engaged in a deal in my life, I spent the first 90% of the time asking the client what their problems are, what is it that they need, if, you know, what ways do they believe it can be solved. And then eventually I would say, okay, so if I did this and that, and it solved this and this, would you want to buy it? And they'll say yes. And I'll say, good. If it was at that price, would you want to pay it? And they'll say, sure. And that's it. That's the deal, right? And I know it sounds like, you know, for most of us, especially again when we're young, you know, it sounds like no, selling is clever. I'm not a salesman at all, but I closed hundreds of millions of dollars, and I frequently get clients buying back more and more and more and more, simply because I never ever sell anything that anyone doesn't need. Okay, and so the question is, what is it about your business that you can take to another country where it becomes, where your strength becomes an immediate fulfillment for their need?
Great. Should we go to the other hand raiser? Lewis? Oh, sorry, I think you're on mute.
Yes.
Hello, thank you for doing this, Mo. Very kind of you.
Thank you.
So like my line of questioning is like around the role of technology in modern life. So like, I'd like to hear your opinions on social media and the manipulation of neurological feedback loops through software. I'm aware that like many prominent figures in Silicon Valley don't allow their children to use social media or even the internet altogether. Also, like more generally, do you think the products and services coming out of Silicon Valley, which are like built around harvesting attention and data of users for profit, like, are they ultimately conducive to human happiness?
No, they're not. Okay, so you may have seen in the social dilemma, I was in that same place. Huh? The Google I joined changed the world, okay? And there was a part of my life where I strongly believed that getting Google to operate in Bengali would change Bangladesh, okay? I am single-handedly responsible for kickstarting Arabic, okay? And Arabic led to the Arab Spring, believe it or not. Huh? So that idea of, do those technologies have value and positive value to them? Yeah, at least we started that way. I think the challenge we have as humanity is that too much of anything is bad and too much greed is not good. If you've seen Wall Street, remember the movie Greed is Good? Greed is Good was probably the changing point in the 80s around a form of doing business that was all about, I want more and more and more and more, okay? Now, yeah, I mean, I left because I don't believe this is good for the world anymore, or more of it is not good for the world. I also am writing, by the way, I'm almost a chapter away from a book that I call Scary Smart. And Scary Smart is a view of artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence, how basically after like 80% of the book, I could get to the point where I said, there's nothing wrong with artificial intelligence. There is just a lot wrong with us, okay? And if artificial intelligence gets their intelligence from observing our patterns, we're freaking screwed, okay? And the idea is, in two words, is you are being given a tool. And that tool can give you superhuman strength or can make you a slave. And the difference between them is a choice that you have, okay? So I'll tell you, for example, so I'm working on a project, even when I work on my personal development, I work in project format. So I'm working on a project that I call Half Monk. And Half Monk is the ability to spend 50%, exactly 12 of every 24 hours of my life, other than, you know, sleeping and eating and surviving. I want to spend 50% of my hours doing activities that are nourishing for my soul and spirit and my mindfulness and so on and so forth, and still be engaged and spend 50% of my time focused on my startups and my projects and 1 billion happy and so on and so forth. And so the way to do that, I basically started to look into the details, the minute details of how can I squeeze 10 minutes out of this and 20 minutes out of that. And the truth is, most of the evil of the internet comes from what I call swiping and typing, okay? Swiping and typing is basically doing mindless things that are driven by the AI, not you, okay? And I think it's good enough for you to say, instead of saying, screw Google, I freaking hate them, or screw Facebook, I freaking hate them, or screw Instagram, I freaking hate them, which, by the way, I feel at times, huh? I basically look at them and say, I love what's good about them and hate what's not, okay? And I will use what is good about them in favor of my mission and what I believe in, and I will avoid what's not. And so I basically have dropped, again, this is really lively now, so it's very interesting. I started to use, of course, screen time apps and so on. I realized I was spending 6.5 hours a day on social media and WhatsApp. right? And of that, there was around 6 or maybe 5.5 of those hours on what I call a toxic internet, which I have now dropped to 1 hour and 10 minutes a day. And I'm intending to drop to 50 minutes. And then when I get there, I'm intending to drop it to 30 minutes. By the way, there is a level of toxicity that unfortunately is needed within today's world for my job. It's not needed for you, okay? But for my job, where I have to actually respond to people, and people connect to me on internet, on social media, and I need to know their profile to answer their question and so on. So I do a bit of swiping and typing, right? But I'm dropping it more and more and more and more. And there are techniques to do that. You will never change the world. That was actually the advice that Ali gave me. You will never change the world. You're only capable of changing your little world, okay? And when you change your little world will become bigger. So while I disapprove entirely of the way technology is going, I will say for each and every one here, all you can do is change yourself, not insist that Facebook change themselves. Okay, not insist that Instagram does things differently. And the way to change yourself, I'll give you my top line approach is I never swipe. I never click on what they recommend to me. Never, ever. Okay, you know, whether they are butts squatting or cars or whatever, which I don't know why they show me those things, right? Because they are no longer my interest. But I never click. Never let them be in control of me. That's number one. Number two, I limit my time for swiping and typing. I think you should aim to limit it to 0, which is the aimless activity online that really doesn't give you any good. And you switch off, of course, you know, there are simple techniques. You switch off all notifications without exception. You can try to turn your phone into grayscale. That works miracles. And you measure like we measure on fitness apps. Measure that. So every one of you, please install an app that shows you the reality of how much time you're spending online. Now, all of that is not going to solve problems like being spied on or being, data mined and so on and so forth. You may choose that these are big concerns for you. If that's the case, then leave. I don't have the choice of leaving because I have a task that has to be spread to 1 billion people online. So I sort of say, okay, that's the tax I pay. They can spy on me. They're not going to find a lot interesting anyway.
Thank you, Mo. You're so right about finding that balance between sort of using the internet for good, but not sort of getting caught up in all of its toxicity of social media. Should we go to Philippe's embarrassing question?
Sorry, I'm kind of on the move here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the talk and thanks for your time as well, Mo, and guys for organizing. Actually, my embarrassing talk was very much to do with Louis, social media manipulation, how that's, how we're going into the future. I would like to connect that with the book of 21 Lessons to 21st Century from Harari, where he basically looks at the different threats of biotechnology, and all sorts of technologies. And he does talk about a specific population that will become this irrelevant population. So my question to you, what kind of advice do you have? You're bringing happiness to the world, you're bringing all this advice, but how can you bring that advice to government and institutions as well to ensure that we don't have a population becoming irrelevant because they no longer have skills for the labor market, and then you come in and you say, well, but if you're happy, you'll be okay. So, how do you bridge that gap between,
I will shock you, to be honest. First of all, I think we're mostly irrelevant already. We're irrelevant because we are slaves, we're puppets, we're being used for what we're told to be used to. Okay, and that, by the way, includes what we do as work and includes what we spend our money on. I think to avoid that, the only answer for me is the people, not the governments. So let me tell you, I operated businesses at very, very, very senior level. I attended hundreds of meetings with royal families, prime ministers. I sat on the advisory board of technology and innovation in many, many countries, including countries that you would feel oh my God, what are you doing there, right? And I don't believe that politics is only the result. I don't believe that the inefficiency of politics is only the result of how we set up politics, but it's really a result of the incredible efficiencies in systems that are so bureaucratic and big and slow, right? So the fact that Donald Trump takes a specific decision that shocks you is not only a result of Donald Trump's way of looking at life, but it's also a result of the environment in which he swims, okay? And so in my personal view, especially someone who has been a very integral part of the Arab Spring, you know, and I had no opinion on, I didn't live in the Middle East for a long time, but I was, you know, integral in terms of I was the head of Google at the time. You know, a lot of what's happening was centered around the internet and so on and so forth. I will tell you that the only change that life will show us in the future is change that you do to yourself, okay? And the difference between you and us is we were a useless generation. We were totally useless, okay? We were totally useless because we were the generation that moved from having one TV channel on TV that basically told you exactly what the government wanted you to hear, to having 400,000 channels on TV, feeling that this is freedom of expression, when in reality what was happening is we were misinformed by advertisers, corporations, capitalists, and the government, okay? And so the truth is, I feel that your generation is the first generation that actually says, we're going to discuss those things and we're going to do what we believe is right, okay? And all I'm asking you to do as a generation is instead of trying to affect global problems, okay, just change yourself. Change yourself, and then you will attract people like you who want to do the same change, and then you will attract more people and more people and more people. And so the way the internet works is, you raise your hand and you say, I'm no longer going to play this game. I'm going to play differently. Here is how I'm going to play, okay? And as you do that, more and more and more and more people will show up. And believe it or not, if none of us swipe, if none of us click on squatting butt videos, Instagram will start to show us more happiness videos. They have no interest in what it is that they show us, okay? It's just that the algorithms are by definition more biased. Okay, so they show a few of us something, we click on it vigorously, and so they show more of us the same thing, and so we click on it more vigorously, right? You need to take a stand, and if we take that stand, interestingly, the whole world will change. It will take a little longer than shouting in the streets, okay? But it will be a much more solid change than expecting the governments to change anything. I think the government's best contribution is to stay out of the way. Yeah.
Thanks, Mo. I remember listening to you on Elizabeth's Day, How to Fail, and you spoke a bit about changing AI, like the behavior of the machine so that it sort of promotes happiness is sort of the ultimate goal. So it's really interesting to sort of
and once again, we would tell ourselves, because we have something that's called the control problem in AI research, which is, let's get the developers and the governments to regulate AI. Good luck with that, right? The only way we can actually change our future is to say, I'm no longer going to bully anyone on the internet, so that there is enough evidence for AI to understand that actually I want to be happy and I want others to be happy. So that AI understands not what the developer is telling them, which is help us sell more, as they call it, selling, spying, gambling, and killing. Okay, these are the 4 big applications of AI. Instead of that, maybe we should tell them, hey, by the way, if you want my interest, make me happy. And it's really interesting when you think about it, that we are, again, the first generation that can make those choices. You can make a choice that says, I'm no longer going to be a bully. I don't want to be that way. I want to show the world that I actually want my happiness and I want others to be happy.
Thank you. Alice messaged me a while ago. She couldn't put her hand up, but she's very keen. Should we make this the last question?
As you wish, I'm here.
I feel bad taking up for too much of your time, but Alice, I'll pass on to you.
Thank you. Very glad that I got the last question. First of all, thank you so much, Mo. It's been lovely listening to you. I just changed my question in my head in this very moment. I hope it's fine that we move over to the entrepreneurial side of things. I know it might sound that I am just saying this because you're interested in happiness, but I'm very interested in that area. I feel like although most of the metrics in this world are pointing to that the world is becoming an increasingly better place to live in, at the same time, people are getting more and more unhappy. Yeah. And I'm very driven to, change that through starting a startup within that field. And I have so many different ideas that, one day I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then next day I'm going to do that. And I feel like currently I'm quite stuck because it's almost like I'm waiting for the perfect big solution, right? And listening to you having, 27 and still counting companies that you've been up and running, I was just wondering how you go about that and if you have any advice on how to get started with the startup.
Totally. One of my favorite questions, by the way. Thank you, Alice. So I'll just say a small objection. The world is not getting better. Okay. So I'm a businessman. I have a lot of experience in manipulating data. You can always show the client a chart that proves something. Okay. The challenge with our world today is that the world is getting better on topics that we sometimes need and most of the time don't. Okay. And at the same time, the price we're paying in terms of setting ourselves up for the future is much, much worse. So there are things that are called lagging indicators and things that are called leading indicators. If you understand in the stock market, lagging indicators are basically this company performed so well, that's why its price is here today. Leading indicators is, but it's the CEO is leaving and the CFO is in scandal and so on and so forth. Clearly the price is going to go down tomorrow. Okay. And I believe the price of the stock of humanity is going down. I believe that, if you haven't seen Our Planet or the work of David Attenborough, the last documentary and so on, the work of Alexandra Cousteau and all of the others, we're basically getting a better life in terms of luxuries we don't need at the cost of things that will destroy our future. Okay. I don't think that's a better world. And I think we should stop saying, yes, less people are dying in wars, less people are dying out of health issues and so on and so forth. These are wonderful benefits, right? We all have Zoom and iPhones. That's amazing. But at the same time, there is so much going wrong with our world that we have to say the leading indicators need correction. Now, your core question was, I start things very quickly in my mind, and then I do them, and then I pivot through them, and then I end up with a different product. So there are two ways to have an impact in the world. One of them is to think thoroughly about what you're about to start, okay, and that gets you to the point where when you have the great idea, you can be successful. And the other is what we in software call A/B testing. Okay, and A/B testing is a much quicker way, if you want, in your current world, to generate and test and then pivot. Generate, test, and pivot is the right way of doing it. So, for example, in my past, when it came to spreading happiness, I had a producer as a friend with a camera crew, and we sat down and we recorded stuff that most of the time was not usable. Today, with today's technology, I take a selfie video and I just post it online. And if people hate it, I remove it, right? It's very straightforward. The effort associated with putting that video online is so small that actually producing it is easier than thinking about what to produce. Do you realize that? So with startups, the same is true, okay? The same is true in terms of there is the cost of your idea. Innovation is a very messy procedure, okay? It has to be irrational at the beginning. It has to be crazy a little bit. It has to be different than anything we know, because otherwise it wouldn't be innovative, right? And so at that stage, it's actually advisable to take this and do something about it for as long as it doesn't cost you too much. So there is a little bit of a funnel. The funnel basically means be crazy at the beginning, okay? And be more rational in the middle and towards the end. And that funnel is also the reverse on the other side. It's very cheap at the beginning and it's very expensive at the end. So when I worked at Google X, and I don't count the startups that I built at X in that, which actually are quite impressive and I'm more proud of most of them, by the way, than my other startups. But at X, we had a process that was called rapid evaluation. Rapid evaluation was very straightforward. It was basically, if it took two people a couple of weeks of work to verify if something is going to actually work or not, and if it's going to sell or not, then it's easier to get them to work on it for 2 weeks than to get them to put a month and take some of the management time to try and prove that it will work afterwards. Okay, so sometimes it's actually much easier to go and say, I have this crazy idea. I'm just going to do a few mock-ups of the interface and show it to a few of my friends and see if they like it. Okay, and by the way, you should show it to a few of your friends and a few of your enemies, because your friends are going to always say, oh my God, you're so amazing. I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing, right? And you don't want that. You want an honest view of like, this is a piece of crap, right? And because the cost is so small at the beginning, my advice is try. Once you start, I promise you, within the 2 weeks, you're going to change your mind on the idea. Within a month after that, you're going to pivot one more time, and it's going to evolve until it gets to the point where it actually makes a difference, right? But if you wait for it to be fully cooked, you're rarely ever going to start anything. I had startups in my life that I started and shut down within 4 weeks, okay? And within those 4 weeks, it cost me a few $1,000s, who cares, right? And you know, I had other startups that I doubled down on. I doubled down on only when they proved that they were going to be successful, right? And I had others that I doubled down on and then I lost money. That's fine. At the end of the day, your life is that portfolio of I tried this, it worked. I tried this, it failed. I tried this, it was boring and lame. I tried that, it was very exciting. And it's a very different style, but I would probably say it's a much quicker style to innovation. As long as the cost is not high, allow yourself to try rather than think.
I really like that. It's like take a few steps forward and maybe you would take 1 or 2 steps back, but you will at least make progress all the time towards, you know, your goal, your Northern Star, whatever you call it.
Yeah. Entrepreneurs are video gamers, okay? No idea what's going to happen around the corner. I have no idea, okay? But we know how we're going to handle it. We know that we're trying to reach the end of the level, right? We don't know the path we're going to take there. And one of my biggest advice, by the way, is marry yourself to a problem, not a product. Okay, so my problem is I want to reinvent consumerism to reduce waste and pollution and to give consumer more transparency and choice. Okay, that's my problem. I'm married to that. I wrote a bit of code at the beginning. It didn't work. I threw it away. I wrote another bit of code. It worked, right? And that's the idea. The idea is as long as I'm associating myself with that North Star, the problem, I will always find an answer to it.
Thank you so much, Mo, for just such an inspiring session and sharing your wisdom on happiness and entrepreneurship. I know that we went through quite a lot of happiness, but I think that's so important because, as you say, happiness is what leads to success. So it's been wonderful. If anyone who's still here, we could do a quick, if you want to turn your videos on, we can do a quick screenshot of a photo and sort of for the event.
As we do that, by the way, can I just remind everyone, I am available on social media. So if you, because there was a question that came to me privately that said, can I ask you more questions? I actually answer every question that I get, even though sometimes it takes me weeks to get there. So find me on any of the platforms. Instagram is my most active recently, and ask me anything. I will record the video and put it as a response online. The other thing is do try slow-mo. I promise you it will make a big difference to your life. And you have to notice that. So the ladies started to fix their hairs. The men were like,
okay, I'll try and do a couple so we get everyone in. Smile, everyone. One. And then there's the second page. Amazing.
Amazing indeed. I'm
Thank
very,
you so much, Mo.
you're very, very welcome. Thank you for staying with me.
And thank you everyone for coming. All right. Good night. Bye.